Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about our remote inspection strategy that we've been implementing over the most 12 months now, in fact, at the MHRA. So if I could move to next slide. So prior to the pandemic, the majority of our inspections were conducted on site in person. So GMP, GD and DL inspections were not routinely done remotely. We did have a couple of exclusions from that. So pharmacovigilance CCP inspections, day one of the inspection was often done remotely from our office. And that was to do things like connect systems, do some electronic data review prior to the inspection being an on-site in-person visit. And also some of our action group follow-up cases, so those which referred to that critical inspection findings. The follow-up work was conducted remote as well, which gave us a level of remote inspection experience prior to the pandemic last year. As has already been alluded to, in March in 2020, that was the date that we went down lockdown in the UK, so the 23rd of March, it's clearly in my head, and of course halted all of our routine on-site inspection activity. What that meant was we had to completely transform inspection model and the other regulators across the country. Since that time, since March, rating to essential on-site inspections. So what we've deemed as inspection and essential inspections are those which are support COVID-19 UK government response. So whether that be vaccines or treatment inspections that may be required, or any other critical inspections to ensure public health risk. So can inspect fell into those categories we have performed on site. And that has involved a number of triggered GMP, GTP, and also GDP incidents. The rest of our GXP inspection process, of course, being did off-site. We've included on the slide here just a link to our guidance that we issued at the point at which we moved to a hybrid model. So with some inspections formed that fell as essential category, and they were conducted remotely. So that link, if you would like to read that for extra information. So I can move to the next slide, please. So in terms of our pre-pandemic remote inspection approaches, what we actually found was the pandemic across all areas of GXP at the MHRA, we had increasing levels of inspection requests for documents prior to site visit. And this includes like pre-inspection compliance reports, quality system procedures, data testing, deviations to review, corrective actions from pre-inspections. All of the documents were being requested of an on-site inspection anyway. And the reason for that being that enabled us to really focus our time as efficiently as possible actually on site. Next, please. Okay, what that meant was in terms of our lockdown remote approach, from our Q1 2020, which is the date in the year, we've moved to our GXP remote inspection model. Of course, we had to completely redefine the way we conducted our and also into our MHRA quality system. So we spent quite a number of weeks between March and April doing that across the GXP so that we had those images developed. What we tried to do was implement a really pragmatic approach at the time and reducing the regulatory burden wherever, while also ensuring that we were maintaining the regulatory over the protection of public health during that pandemic period. And the reason trying to implement that pragmatic approach was it was us as inspectors, of course, who had moved to completely revise working from home, but of course everybody inspecting all of the organisations that we were inspecting were adapting completely new ways of working as well. So everybody working from their home offices, children background, potentially with other caring responsibilities. So there were lots of things to take into when developing our remote inspection programme in a way that worked both for us as inspectors and also for those regulators. And in terms of the practical things, we do issue inspection for our remote inspection. So the MP certificate do denote the fact that the inspection was did remotely, and all of our inspection statements state that they cover area during that particular inspection, and that's something that we did anyway pre-pandemic, so it's not new. Did find over the last 11 months or so is that we have managed to uncover critical inspection across all areas of GXP. And while we don't determine a critical inspection finding as a success, what that has shown us is that our remote inspection model is effective in terms of an approach in this period. That said, we have managed determine issues, to discover non-compliances or compliances where they were there. We do absolutely recommend that remote inspections don't in any way replace that physical on-site inspection process, and there will always be aspects that are far better reviewed on-site. However, in the current climate and moving forward into the future, there will certainly be things that we will take forward post-pandemic from lessons that we've learned during the action period, and they will be a key in terms of our action approach. I could move next slide, please. So, as has always been the case, our risk-based inspection inspections has absolutely continued. That hasn't changed due to our action approach. Currently, our vaccine inspections are, of course, and that's due to the public health of a mass vaccination program. And again, that's something that's the same for all regulators the globe at the moment. Not only the inspect that we select is determined by risk, but also the scope of the inspection is discussed as well. So whether for a particular new technology that's been implemented, a dosage form, a clinical trial used for an application, pharmaceutical system, pharmacovigilance system, across the GXPs, the risk scope of is determined by whatever is important for that company and from us from a regulatory perspective. So in terms of what we've continued to prioritize inspections based on critical inspection follow-up, for example. So for companies that have had critical inspection findings in the past, they would fall into our high priority category. We've also, of course, prioritized inspections that are required for team support, as I've mentioned. So any inspections associated with either vaccine in addition to COVID-19, of course, fall into our priority category. And those that are required to support emergency authorization approach. So we haven't been operating to the same licensing process as would be usually the case in recent months. Of course, we've been operating an emergency authorization approach of the vaccine approvals, and that's required an expedited inspection review and approach also. Again, that's the main focus of our remote inspection as well. And we refined our inspection scope to that need. And what we've done in doing that is really use the expertise across the divisions at the MHRA. So in our licensing division, our clinical trials unit, arts and risk management division, in order to focus where the issues are with those licensing applications, inspection focus to be. So in terms of what we've paused our routine overseas inspection program. We are still currently in a lockdown situation in the UK, so we're able to routinely travel these unless for critical COVID-19 support reasons. We also haven't been routinely inspecting our NHS site, so our healthcare system in the UK. That being, we of course want to focus the attention of staff providing support for patients, of course, our rather than focusing on inspections. That said, we have to incorporate investigator site inspections in a remote approach using some of the technology I will describe that we've been testing and developing through the course of the pandemic. So, again, next slide, please. To give you a feel of where we've been the last 11 months, so this is the number of inspections between the first of last year and the end of January this year. So that totaled 670 inspections, and you'll see the difference in the spread depending on the area of GXP, and there's a variety of that. So which being we have large GMP and GDP inspection, and also the number of days that are involved in GCP inspections, for example, are more days involved and more inspectors from a smaller team than, for example, is required for a GDP inspection. So it just gives you a bit of a feel for the spread of inspection being doing. Next slide, please. So as folks across our working from home have looked like this is my inspectors in training, and we have used an awful lot of conferencing, teleconferencing, including doing conferences such as sitting in our own houses, which is of course not our preferred option. It would be far nicer to sit in person. What the conferencing does allow us to do, that direct interaction with the companies that we are inspecting remotely, also provides the opportunity to verify identification of those that we're inspecting, should that be required for the particular type of inspection. We've also used a great deal of file platform technologies, and those have really successfully in terms of exchange of documents, ability to talk to each other during the inspection. We've used a combination of company provider platforms, again, quite successfully. So if a company has their own platform that has all the security arrangements in place, we've been happy to use that, and it's worked quite slickly because we are very used to using that system. We have now an file share process set up, however, having said that uses Microsoft allows us to document share within Teams channel, and also allows us to have separate up. So we'll have one channel for document sharing and discussions with the organisation that we're inspecting, and then a separate credential channel for the inspectors to talk between themselves. And what that really tries to replicate is the physical inspection process, the same type of setup as we would have as if on site, just with company representatives, and also confidentially between ourselves while on site. It also allows the documents to be uploaded directly into that Teams channel to allow us to review those. The inspectors to retain control over how long that channel is kept open. And we've also hosted regulator observed this process as well. And of course, a vast amount of email, we've streaming events using this technology, and we've also promoted indirectly a huge number of electronic systems, as you could imagine, including electronic trial master file and case report forms, etc. I could move to the next slide. In terms of little approach challenges, logistically, organisations are notified of our inspections as per our normal, so notified unless it's a very triggered short notice inspection. Any pre-inspections are requested and reviewed as our normal process. We have modified some of the pre-inspection document requests, and that's the scope of the inspection often being rather than if you're doing an on-site inspection, and that's simply because it's not do a full systems inspection, and you're doing it remotely in the same way as if you were doing an on-site inspection. That narrow is very much directed by risk, as I've already mentioned. Those are the logistical approaches into challenges that we've seen. Perhaps conversely to what would be, we've actually found inspections take longer to conduct than if we're conducting them in. And that's due to a variety of reasons. For example, it could be working in different time zones to that we're inspecting. That results in delays in between requests and receipt of those requests coming back in. Even if you're in the same time zone and experiencing delays in receipt, and again, that's due to the different ways of working and the challenges that we're all facing in that at the moment. So it's not the same as being in person in the real question on a particular piece of equipment or document or listing that you're reviewing. You can call it in and have that direct discussion immediately on site. When you're ready, there's obviously that delay, and we're finding that that's extending the time frame for the inspection. One of the things that have missed significantly in terms of remotely a site is really that ability to build a rapport with the company inspecting and those that you're with during the inspection. You lose that ability to understand body language, to read facial expressions, which are of course really key in terms of an inspector's ability to understand how a company works. So that's been a challenge. And it is difficulties in terms of that ease of assessing the state of premises or mental facilities. If you're conducting an inspection, you can very do a facility tour, a clinic tour. You can get your hands on equipment if you need to. When you're remotely, obviously, that's very different. Go to next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the technological challenges that we've seen, also if we're talking about access to lots of electronics, that has required us to get our heads around an awful lot of passwords, account details, and all of that takes time, contributes to that extended that I've mentioned. A hybrid system is also a particular challenge. So if you're in a system that is completely electronic, that has one set of challenges. But if you're inspecting a system that has a hybrid approach, or lots of paper to review as well, we've developed techniques for inspecting those as well. And again, we've used a variety of approaches for that through, for example, screen sharing, using Zooms to look at those, and not in any way an ideal way. It's allowed us to have that level of oversight that we've required. Something as simple as the technological capability of the site that has an impact on the success of the inspection sometimes. Something as simple as the broadband the company that we're inspecting can impact on the ease of the inspection working remotely. I don't think there's anybody on this call who hasn't been thrown out of a Zoom call over the last 11, 12 months. An inspector asking a question, or indeed waiting for the answer to the question, that can be quite a challenge. Handling the size of files, and again, we've had to go through a number of approaches in with how to file sizes. Also in terms of visual technologies, so we have, as I did in the previous presentation, used a number of electronic approaches from an MHRA perspective to have on site that piece that you're when you're inspecting remote, and those are listed out here on the slide. I won't talk through them all, but the MHRA, it's certainly one of the things that we're continuing to develop in terms of our innovative approaches, having those eyes on and using technology, including augmented reality tools, is something that might enable us to have that virtual facility directed by the team, replicating as close to possible that in-site inspections. That's something they're looking at the moment at the MHRA. We can move to next slide, please. So in terms of other remote challenges, there are, of course, areas that are easier to inspect remotely than others. Integrity is an example of an area that is sometimes challenging to inspect. So you can review listings, audit trails electronically, but what we do is see those pieces of paper with source data, notes in lab books, etc., that could give you a greater level of detail in terms of that data or issues with data integrity. I've called on the slide disrupt companies. There is a number of companies out there who don't necessarily comply to regulations, and what we've found there is certainly an risk of the ability to information provided to us as regulators when you're working remotely. That's not to say it's detected, though, I should add. Handling and preventative actions is also sometimes a challenge. So we can review a report of how a company is going to deal with corrective actions from a previous inspection. Sometimes it's difficult to actually see whether that has been implemented on the site. We've also found, from a practical perspective, as a regulator, there's been a opportunity for us to train new, and we have certainly had a number of new join us over the pandemic period at the MHRA. Training them has been a very different experience, or training an inspector in remote approaches, when we're hoping in the not too distant to return to that on-site way of working. And of course, I had to make strain who has not experienced that over the months. We could the next slide, please. So, in successes from an MHRA perspective, what the last 12 taught us is that even in an emergency situation, it is absolutely possible to maintain regular oversight and to ensure public protection. We have found logistical findings that had we not done and implemented this completely different way of working, would not have been picked up. So that real success to give us that level of confidence that we do that. It's been a really useful approach for follow-up inspections, also for those critical inspections in terms of COVID-19 support. It also been safe to both the companies that we're inspecting and also, of course, the inspector in these times where we're not actually to send people out to review the information to do. And while it has been in some ways to train new inspectors, it has, of course, provided us with an opportunity to do a lot of theoretical training rather than ground training, which of course is the training package. Could move slide, please. We've done quite a lot of industry engagement over the last 12 as well in terms of our remote approaches, our changing approach. The approach changed a number of times, as I've mentioned, the last 12 months. And what we've seen is a variety of responses in terms of views. So we've seen diverse views on flexibility. So, for example, move to the remote inspection approach rather than allocating, say, these are your 4 days for the inspection start and end. We were quite flexible approach, and we found that some companies found that helpful where their staff were working remotely, perhaps responsibilities, whereas others felt that it far exceeded the inspection approach as compared to that defined here on site. And so we had mixed views on that. And we have, as time has gone on, we have moved closer to a number of days that would make an on-site visit. We had the same as we had thought for ourselves. City supports the health of companies that we're inspecting and not exposing them to additional individuals, and allows greater flexibility on their part in terms of working with inspectors. And I think the fact we relayed very clear start that what we expect at all as anybody going in inspection site where they would usually be working from home had their non-inspection, and also certainly don't expect a whole back room to support the inspection during period. Again, I think that was helpful, and that was fed back industry as well. And also we had feedback that actually it was quite a motivator to know that inspections still happening during this period, and that the standards of did still need to be met even in a pandemic situation. So that was really good to hear. We could move to slide, please. So in terms of public health benefits, I've covered these already. So of course our remote inspection has allowed us to maintain that level of regulatory oversight, to patients, and to maintain data integrity standards for applications that are being made for COVID-19, for example, and over the last few months. It facilitates maintenance of pharmaceutical supply chain, and in particular relation to we found a number of critical findings that we have implemented this approach. It's also very much supported the accelerated development of the COVID-19 vaccine, and ensuring that those quality and safety standards are maintained for all of those applications that have gone through, and also allowed us to be supporting innovative therapies as they have come through the pipeline as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of what do we see in terms of an MHRA for the future? Well, for early foreseeable future, we will be continuing to operate the same model, and that it would only be critical COVID-19 support inspections on site. But we have, you may have just had an update on our government's just issued on Monday in terms of a our roadmap out of lockdown, and what we'll continue to do is follow that government guidance and adapt that and keep industry updated, potentially move to doing a greater number of inspections in the near future. That we will absolutely be continuing with inspections being our toolbox of inspections, and you'll see more and more high approaches post-pandemic as well. It's something that we very much see with, noting also that I've already said our remote inspection approach will never replace that physical on-site inspection. I think one thing that's been really good to see is that inspection areas previously considered possible to do remotely have been internally by our own very successful outcomes. For example, remote inspections are now being taken forward into our routine ways of working. And as the majority of bioequivalent cells which are used to support generics application in the UK are done outside of the UK, over this course many of those being done in India, with the fact that we're unable to travel, these remote approaches then continue that level of regulate on the areas of risk into the trials, and that includes such as source data verification in the clinic, decisions, also management and P. And again, a variety of ways. So reviewing data through sharing desktops, reviewing it electronically, and also through direct analysis as well. And again, the focus very much remains risk. So I could move final slide. So also just wanted to highlight the work with ICMRA, the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities. So on behalf of MHRA, I'm chairing the COVID-19 transformation of GCP and DMP working group. We presented a deep on that digital transformation to remote inspections to the ICMRA policy group back in October 2020. And the next deliverable that the group is a reflection paper on our remote inspection approaches for both G and GCPs. Do look out for that. And I've listed the number of global regulators that are involved in the working group. We're looking to work with as well and really join up and have a collaborative effort in work reflection paper. So again, that's really good to see that global collaboration. Okay, so finally, just to say very much for allowing us the opportunity to say what we've been up to over the last month. And again, the same sentiment, it would have been to be in the room with you rather than sitting in the same office that I've been in for the last 12 months. But thank you very much.